I want to emphasize here that Mauritius is in a very important part in its history because it is about to make decisions regarding its energy future. And it is very lucky because those decisions have not been made in the past. Every country that has made major energy decisions has to live with a system that is adopted and is very soon obsolete. And countries are then tied in to an infrastructure of energy production and use that is very difficult to change. We know from the technology that is driving today's civilization that a computer is obsolete within 6 months. Yet governments spend a large part of their country's budget to implement energy production and consumption systems that, of course, become obsolete. But then the countries cannot afford to change these systems because of the sunk investment costs. Therefore, my first statement is a warning that no decision be made that will lock the nation of Mauritius into a certain type of very rigid energy policy such that it cannot change when better options come along. I have read the government study, L'Île de Maurice, and it seems to me it's full of very forward-looking ideas. So certainly everyone on the island seems to be aware of the possibilities, but yet being aware of something and implementing something else is not necessarily the same thing. So I think everyone needs to be very careful about such decisions. Now, the second point I wanted to raise is one of the source for the energy need. Everyone, all the citizens today will cry out that they need more energy. I think it is very important to undertake a survey to see where this energy is used and if it is used wisely. Now, I do not have first-hand experience from Mauritius, but here in the United States, I would say that 90% of our energy is completely and totally wasted for objectives that are not necessary and, in fact, are harmful. We have constructed our cities in the United States according to the model of urban sprawl, which, of course, is being duplicated all around the world and also in Mauritius, increasing car use, individual car use. The fabric of the cities are being built out as suburbs, thus necessitating car use and therefore gasoline consumption. This is not necessary. This is built because cheap fuel is available now. However, we all know, according to many studies, that this is the peak of gasoline, cheap gasoline availability. So this is just going to go down. Therefore, part of the energy policy has nothing to do with producing electricity or importing petroleum, but it has to do with urbanism, which is my own specialty. If we build our cities to be more efficient, more energy efficient, and more efficient in terms of transport, then we will save an enormous amount of energy for the future. If instead we are build the configuration of our cities today so that they require an enormous amount of energy just to run with the minimum efficiency, then we are locked in to this consumption of energy, and then the economy of the state has to be sacrificed in order to feed this inefficient urbanism that has been created now. So I want to point the finger to an entirely different direction. The shape of the cities, the shape of the buildings. In the last several decades of cheap fuel, cheap oil, cheap electricity, we have been building glass high-rises. Totally inefficient, a ridiculous expense, but it has been afforded by the industrialized nations, which, however, now have major cities that are just totally inefficient. So a country like Mauritius can make these decisions on the local scale, and it will save itself from having to spend its energy on just in wasteful ways. Energy, of course, is needed by any society. However, a society, in order to function well, needs far more energy than we are wasting today. Now, the third point I want to mention is a trend away from centralization. If we look at energy production methods, energy production can be varied and can have a combination of very different technologies. Now, the state naturally wants to centralize these, and centralization means thinking from the top down and thinking about the efficiency of source, therefore a uniformization, something centralized to produce power at a very large volume. I'm personally wary of these, and in fact, the cases we have studied in the past always lead to disaster. Because what centralization means is an efficiency that is obtained in the immediate short term. Instead of having a variety of different and slightly inefficient energy sources distributed throughout the country or throughout a single city, it becomes more efficient to have a single power plant. But the single power plant means that it has to be one single technology, whether it is a nuclear technology or a coal-burning technology or even an alternative technology. The centralization, I think, poses a great danger because it is not resilient. So you save money in the short term and you build your power plant and everything is perfectly efficient. And then when something breaks down, the whole system breaks down. Furthermore, say 10 years down the road, your energy source becomes very expensive. You are stuck with this, and it is extremely difficult to make any changes in a central distribution network. I mentioned nuclear power plants on purpose. No one wants to think about nuclear power plants. Well, the modern world has made a disaster with nuclear power plants, not because of the technology itself, which is no better and no worse than say coal-burning power plants, but the centralization. The centralization has really destroyed the nuclear industry, and I will explain why. You have a very small local nuclear power plant, and it has a certain amount of danger associated with a possible leakage of radiation, with possible accidents that could occur. Well, if you want to centralize this, then the nuclear power industry, especially in the developed countries, then says, well, we will not build several small power plants, we will build one large power plant. However, they have not realized, and these are very intelligent people who have missed the central point, the danger associated with a nuclear power plant does not increase by linearly. So one plant that has 10 times the capacity of another plant, in fact, has probably 10,000 or 100,000 times the potential for danger. So the centralization and the scaling up for so-called efficiency vastly multiplies the danger from possible accidents. And therefore, we have seen these disastrous nuclear accidents that have occurred because of the centralization and the exponential rise of dangers. In the recent very unfortunate accident in Fukushima, we had the other factor, namely that there was so much money invested in these plants. And these plants, okay, were operating in 2012, yet the technology was from the 1940s. These reactors were built according to American designs from the 1940s, developed throughout the 1950s. This is antiquated design. However, these were so large, these plants were so centralized, that it was uneconomical and inefficient to make any major changes. Therefore, when we had the disaster, the whole thing broke down with terrifying consequences for the whole nation of Japan. So let me use this example, not just to talk about the nuclear power, but to talk about any centralization. When you invest costs in a centralized power production, then when developments, genuine developments come along, say in 10 years, you cannot implement those developments because you have spent so much money and you are really a hostage to the central power production. Therefore, I'm reluctant to say that a centralized coal power production for Mauritius is a good idea. And I would encourage everyone to think in a more peer-to-peer fashion, in an inefficient fashion. I know the government ministers do not want to hear about inefficiency and variety of energy production. But I think that's far better in the long term because as a system, it is more resilient. And we live in societies on the world that have to be resilient. They have to be able to adapt to change very, very quickly. And the centralized adoption of technologies that cannot change very quickly has proven to be disastrous all over the world. So I think I will finish my introduction now, and let's see where we can take this conversation.